Good evening, everyone. It is Marcy Thomas, founder of Brown Girl Collective and the BGC Book Club, and I would love to welcome you into this space. I can't believe it's been a couple of weeks. It seems like it's been longer than that, but I figured with the holiday last week, a lot of people were celebrating, so we decided not to have a show last week. So, of course, if you're watching after the fact, you might say, "What holiday?" This is right after Thanksgiving. So, of course, that's what I'm talking about here. So, if this is your first time, welcome to the BGC Book Club. It's a wonderful space where I get the opportunity to talk to wonderful women, Black women writers who tell stories by, for, and about us. And tonight is no exception. So, I am coming to you from the outskirts of Atlanta, which is a music city of sorts. And we're going to be talking to our special guest who's from another music city of sorts. So as you come on in the room, you can let us know where you're joining us from, if it's your first time, if you've read the book, and if you have, don't give any spoilers, or just let us know wonderful things about you just so we can know who all is in this space. So tonight, I'm really excited about the book that we'll be talking about by author Phyllis R. Dixon, who I had the opportunity to meet a few months ago when she was here in Atlanta for a book club conference. So I'm excited that we're finally getting around, several months later to actually have a conversation. Now, Phyllis is the acclaimed author of Intermission, which we'll be talking about this evening. Beautiful cover. Intermission, 40 Acres, and Down Home Blues, which is shortlisted for the Lariat Adult Fiction Reading List by the Texas Library Association. She is also a contributor to the New Tri-State Defender book review column and to Chicken Soup for the African American Woman's Soul. A former independent bookstore owner, Phyllis previously worked for the U.S. Treasury Department and currently serves on several nonprofit boards. And she resides in Music City, Memphis, Tennessee. So without any further delay, welcome Phyllis Dixon to the room. Welcome.
Well, hello there. Good to see you.
Yes, good to see you as well. As I mentioned in introduction, we met several months ago, so it's good to finally have a chance to have a real conversation about your glorious book that I enjoyed immensely. So welcome, and see we have somebody here. Let's see where they're joining us from. Okay, actually, it's one of my sorors. Okay, joining from Clarksville, Tennessee, and that is the illustrious Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated. So I had to say that. But
Somebody's right up the road from me.
I'm sorry.
Oh, she's right up the road from me.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. So let's get into it. So, Phyllis, you have had an illustrious career and have done many things throughout that career. So, what was it that led you to actually want to start writing books?
Well, it's something that I've always done. Even in grade school, I wrote stories. So I just always liked writing stories, making up stories. I remember watching the soaps with my grandmother and picking different endings and trying to figure out what was going to happen or how I would write it differently. But when I went to college, writing was not a career that I seriously considered just because I didn't know any writers. It didn't seem like something I could make money at. So I never really seriously considered writing. Along the way, when I was living in Houston, I opened a bookstore. I figured since I had a hard time finding books by Black authors, others did too. So I had a bookstore when I lived in Houston. And during that process, I met a lot of people that were just starting out that now are pretty prolific. Victoria Christopher Murray, Tavis Smiley, Kimberly Lawson Roby, all of them came through. They were all just starting out. Most still had their day jobs. Some were selling books in the back of their trunk still.
Wow.
So that just gave me inspiration that I just figured, well, if they can do it, I can do it too. So that kind of made me start on this path.
Wow, I love that. And some of those people I've had the opportunity to have in this space. So it's just wonderful to hear how everything has grown. And it takes that support. I love the fact that you had your own bookstore, though. That's pretty exciting. What was that like owning your own bookstore for you?
Oh, it was great. I loved it. Um, I know sometimes, I'd be sitting reading and maybe we weren't busy and somebody would come in, and I'd be like, "Dog, I got to put my book down," instead of I was actually there. But I liked it. I liked interacting with readers. And one thing I learned, which I wouldn't have thought, but it was almost like being a hairdresser, where people tell
Mm,
you their business. You know, they don't really know you, but they tell you things. And so that
wow.
part of it was interesting. And I just liked it. I liked, you know, being on the cutting edge of what was coming out, meeting authors. It was a great time, and especially during that time because it was the it was in the '90s, so that
Okay.
was like when Terry McMillan had just come out, and the major publishers had just discovered that Black people do read. So it
Hmm.
was the sweet spot when Black books were just becoming more popular, but before Amazon.
Right, right, yes, because that is a thing. Because as you were talking about, I'm thinking in the back of my mind, Amazon. Because so I think of all of the, even larger bookstores that kind of shut down. Things have happened. I'm thinking because I used to love
Right.
Borders Books and Music, for example. But places that things have changed with Amazon. But I don't know. I feel like I'm seeing a resurgence of other booksellers now because there is something about that intimate experience where you can go into a space and really be able to have get real recommendations from people actually read the books, and bring in people and have that cultural experience. So I think that's
Right.
pretty exciting. So
Yep. Support your independent bookstores.
yes, independent bookstores. And I'm going to put this up now. My best friend always says, don't say shameless, but there is a digital Brown Girl Collective bookstore that you can go to. It's affiliated with Bookshop. So if you go there, you can find Phyllis's book as well as some of the books that we all often read here. So please take a look at that. It's not an independent store per se, but it does help support the work that we do here at Brown Girl Collective. So just keep that in, stick a pin in that, everyone. Appreciate that. So now this is, of course, not your first book. So what was it that drew you to want to write Intermission?
Well, one of the things I say when I tell this story is that I'm telling my age, but when I was a little girl, very little, my career goal when I grew up was to become a member of the Supremes.
Mhm.
And so when they broke up, I was just devastated. I was mad at Diana Ross. I wouldn't listen to any of her music for a long time. And so that was just something that always stuck with me. And I just kind of always wondered, what would happen if they had gotten back together? And then since that time, there have been all kind of different iterations of girl groups, and not just girl groups, all types of musical groups that break up. And so that's just something that's been interesting to me. And actually, I had that idea, but then I wrote 40 Acres and Down Home Blues
Mhm.
before that. And in 2019, I got very sick. And then
Mhm.
once I got better, I said, okay, now I've had this idea for a long time. I need to quit messing around. I'm going to finish this book. I'm going to get an agent, and I'm going to get a publisher. And so that's what happened.
Okay. Now you just mentioned something. You said going to get an agent. So you weren't working with an agent prior to that?
No, 40 Acres and Down Home Blues, I independently published.
Okay.
I
Okay. Well,
went
I
that
have to go
route of
there.
trying to find
Yeah,
a
I have to go there
publisher.
real quick.
I'm sorry.
I have to go there real quick since you brought that up. I apologize. I didn't mean to cut you off. But yes, that what was it that made you decide to switch after going that route in the past?
Um, Again, I think it's just kind of maybe being a little competitive. I don't know, and just thinking, well, other people got book deals. How come I can't get a book deal? Basically, that's it. And then also, I think being a little older and, shipping books and all that, I didn't mind doing it before, but I guess I'm kind of in the stage of my life now where I don't necessarily feel like doing that as much. So that's the other thing. And really, I had tried to get an agent with the first two and didn't, but I probably maybe gave up too soon too. I don't
Okay.
know. So I just felt like I should be able to, I would be able to reach a larger audience if I was able to do that.
All right, and that makes sense because what a lot of people don't realize, and we talked about it a little bit offline, is that being an author is about more than just writing the books. There's so many other pieces that go with it. So anything you can hand over to somebody else, I understand completely.
Yes,
I definitely
definitely.
understand that. So tell us a little bit about what the book is, the story, because one of the taglines says Dreamgirls meets Waiting to Exhale by way of Destiny's Child with a nostalgic 90s twist. So,
Okay.
in Intermission, what is the story about for those who may not have read it yet?
Okay. It's a story of four teen girls that win a talent show and go on to form a singing group. They have pretty good success. And just as they're about to cross over and reach mega levels, sales levels, they break up. So then fast forward 20 years, and now they have an opportunity to reunite and do a reunion tour. And each of the four young ladies, grown ladies by now, is considering it for different reasons. But they also each have their own version of the breakup. And so when they broke up, part of the breakup was that they would never speak to each other again. So that's something that they have to overcome. And so we know that when things happen, there's your version and my version, and the truth is somewhere in between. And so intermission is the story of how they get to that truth.
Wow, and it's just something because in reading it, I'm thinking of groups that I'm familiar with, that we all know and love. Like you mentioned, Destiny's Child, but especially in the '90s, there were so many girl groups, that we all loved, from SWV to I can't even name them all. In
Right.
Vogue, a lot of different groups. So is that why you chose to go with the '90s versus maybe going back to the Diana Ross time, which would have been more like the '60s and early '70s?
Well, because it's a contemporary story. So in
Hmm.
order for it to take place, because the story is not necessarily about, the group. So it's not how they started and all of that. It's more about what happens to the individuals after they break up. So in order for it to be a contemporary story in the 2020s now, um, I couldn't go back that far because then they'd be kind of elderly right now. So
Right, right.
although even though Diana Ross looks fabulous, but so I
She
couldn't go back
does.
too far. So just
Right.
had to go
Well,
back
that
20
makes
years.
that makes sense because you would have had to have the story be in the '80s maybe instead of it being a contemporary story. So that all makes
Right,
sense.
right.
So now I know that you love music and you loved Diana Ross. Did you have to learn a lot about the music industry in order to write the story?
Um, yes, well, particularly about the business side, so that some of the things that I was referring to, would be factual. I live in Memphis. I'm not originally from Memphis. I've been here since 1999. And one of the things that is always amazing to me, because like I said, I do like music, and when I came here, I was just, kind of excited. It's like, oh, I'm gonna go to Al Green's church and do all this other stuff. But people here are just kind of nonchalant about things. You might, well, before he passed, you might see Isaac Hayes over here, or I got the chance to meet Al Bell, the guy that founded
Oh wow.
Stax Music, and the event wasn't even that crowded. And I'm like, this man is a legend. Why aren't people here? And you always meet people that used to be in various aspects of the business that now are maybe what you consider regular people. And so that's
Mm.
something that fascinated me in particular about Memphis. So that was one of the things I tried to bring to the story. And on one instance, I was in at the library here, and I heard somebody singing, and she had a beautiful voice. So when I, came up, washed my hands, all that, and I just told her, I said, "Oh, you have a beautiful voice." And then she said something, and I don't know how we got to talking, but anyway, it was Carla Thomas.
Oh
So
wow.
it's like, yeah, she just in the library, just a regular person, whatever, whatever. So that's something that struck me. So that was one of the things that I wanted to um, do a little different, because there are a lot of books about how groups start and rise
Mhm.
and fall and all of that. So this is really isn't about that. It's their lives independently after the group, breaks up. And so it's told from each of the four ladies' point of view.
All right. Well, great. And we have a quick question, then we can get into and just talk a little bit about each one of those women. We have a question because I was looking for it as well. Will there be an audiobook for the book?
Well, I'm not sure.
Okay.
The publisher, even though this is my third novel, technically for them, I'm a debut writer. So they typically don't, this is what I was told, do audiobooks for first time authors because they're really, not sure how it's going to work out. Because the audio is usually done by, it's not done by the publisher. The audio rights are sold to somebody else. So hopefully with the next one or maybe the next one after that, the rights will be sold. But I will say that is why I need those reviews, because the audio people, that's one of the things that they look at to see if they can justify the investment.
Got it. Well, that makes sense because you asked me that up front, and I will be putting mine in when we finish tonight. But for anyone else who's had a chance to read the book, please leave a review. Now we learned something new today. So now you have four different characters in the book that are a part of this wonderful group, and we want to kind of talk about each one that were in the diamonds just to see where they are. So we start off. I'll start off with Angel. So, who is Angel, and kind of tell us a little bit about her story and what makes her so unique?
Angel is the one character who did stay in the music business. So her story is from the impact. She actually did, I guess, have a rise and fall and rise again. So her point of view is that um, thinking maybe getting, I don't know, I don't want to give away too much, but thinking that getting the group back together will help her career. So that's where she's coming from. But then she's also dealing with, money issues, of course, all of us do. But she's, her career has fallen, her lifestyle has not. And another thing that she's dealing with is her mother has Alzheimer's. So that is another issue that she's dealing with. Maybe one of the reasons she needs some money. So one of the things that the book does touch on is some of the issues of caregiving with
Yes.
Alzheimer's, and just some of the issues that people have to deal with that.
Now, from that perspective, I do like that in the book, each character had a well-rounded story. Yes, it was about, the things that they did in music, but really it was more about where they were in present day. And a lot of times we look at people who we deem to be celebrities and we look at them and think that they're different from us. But kind of like you said, we're running into Carla Thomas, who has like one of my favorite Christmas songs ever. That, people who, are just living regular lives, really, when they're outside of the spotlight, and we get to see that and understand that it may be a person who's dealing with a parent who's not well, or having children that are going through changes, as one of the other characters does. So it's kind of good to see that and to see the real women like behind the scenes of that. And really the story really centers more in that than it does what they did as being musical superstars per se.
Right.
So, of course, we actually have a comment, okay, about the book. Go to Fiverr and get someone to read your book. Publish it yourself on Audible. Audiobooks are so important and standard for most books. Your agent needs to get that done for you. Okay. Well, thanks
Fiverr,
for
okay. I'll
Fiverr.
write that down.
Yes, that's important. So Angela is, trying to come back and bringing things together. Then we also have Carmen, who's a very interesting character as well. I really enjoyed her because she had, I'll let you tell it, but she just had some different things going on in her life that made her very interesting to me.
Okay. Carmen, she was one of the original group members, and after the group disbanded, she finished her degree and became a music teacher. So she's still kind of in the music side, or in music, but in the school system. And as an aside, Anita Ward, the
Mhm.
Ring My Bell lady, she
Yes.
was a teacher in the
Right.
Memphis City School District. So Carmen is a teacher, and some of the things that she's dealing with is well, the primary thing she's dealing with is her son, who was in the wrong place at the wrong time. So he has some things going on, and basically she needs money to help him. In addition
Mhm.
to that, she has some issues going on with her love life.
Right.
And in addition to that, her mother, who was the group's initial, original manager, is also having some health issues. So her mother
Mhm.
has to move in with her. So she's got a lot
Mhm.
on her plate.
Right. And remember, the book is all about these women having to make a decision of whether or not they're going to come back together for this reunion tour. So now, you're hearing some of the things that they're dealing with. Just think of in our own lives, if we're going through certain things, you might say, if I had an opportunity to go do something for 6 months and make, a whole bunch of money, would I do it? What are the pros and cons of making that decision? So we kind of see that play out throughout the story. And then we have Doreen, who also had a very, her storyline was very, what should I say, just to see the things that she went through and kind of to come into a better place in her life.
Okay, Doreen, she was also one of the original group members, and she ended up having a drug problem. She's better. And so, actually, now she's the first lady of a large church in Memphis. So that's her dilemma. She wants to do it, and but maybe or maybe not, as the first lady, that may not necessarily be something she should do. Her career, she went on to finish her degree, and she's working at a bank. So, so that's another issue that she has is leaving her banking job that she has worked hard to ascend to, in addition to some family issues that she's dealing with.
Mm-hmm. One thing with her, it was real interesting to see how she's this career woman, or attempting to be a career woman. She's done this, taken the steps and rising, and now she has this whole decision, about being with the group, but then also just within her life and her marriage and all of that. That her husband has things that he wants her to do as pastor of this church, but yet she has things that she would prefer to do. So I loved being able to see how she worked through that and how they had the conversations and, all these different things. And there's a lot of stuff that we're not going to tell because we don't do spoilers. But, just seeing that and understanding that a lot of times, women do have to make those decisions, whether they're going to do what's best for their husband's rise or are they going to do what's best for their own rise.
Yeah, it takes compromise, but sometimes compromise just means it's not my turn right now. So it's, I heard somebody say it's not 50-50, it's 100-100. So
Mm.
to make a marriage work. So
And last but not least, we have Jade, who was not one of the original members of the group.
right. Um, she is actually she's biracial, and she's had a hard upbringing, and she actually grew up in foster care.
Mhm,
So that's part of her issue is she also has a foster child. So
mhm,
some of the things that she's trying to figure out is if she goes in this, on the thing with the or reunites with the group, what happens to her foster daughter? Um, and but she also has two biological children as well. And when she left the group, she got married. She and her husband. Her husband was from Houston, Texas, so they live in Houston. They have a restaurant, and the restaurant is kind of going through a slump. And so she's got a lot of things to work through as well with her children, her foster daughter, and her husband and their business.
So all of these things really make for a great story. I love that it's told like each woman has chapters, so you get to see some of what's happening with each lady as you go through the book, and just seeing how they come to making the decisions that they have to make, how they're interacting with their families and things like that. But I want to start where we ended, and that's with Jade. And of course, she has her own children, and who are young adults at this point, and having a foster child. Now, in writing her story, or just in thinking about that, how did you, or what was it that made you want to have her kind of try to recapture her own life in helping someone else? How important was that to Jay's portion of the story?
Um, the foster system is something that I'm interested in. I have someone in my family who was a foster parent, and I understand how much of a sacrifice it is. And so I sort of kind of wanted to tell that story a little bit, but then also from the child's point of view, because one of the things that happens is, when they turn 18, they're basically just kind of, okay, you're on your own, and a lot of times they don't have the resources to do that. And 18, most people, I mean, you're an adult legally, but you still got a lot of stuff that you need to work out and grow into. So that was something that I wanted to talk about. One of the things about writing fiction is that you can address issues, but you put them in the story so that they fit in the story seamlessly. You don't want to be preachy. But so if there's issues that you want to talk about, like the foster care system, like criminal justice system, like Alzheimer's, you can just kind of put them in the story and get your point across, or make people think.
Right, right. And definitely, I know a little bit about it. At one point in time, I was a CASA court appointed special
Okay.
advocate.
Okay.
And that those are the people who go out into the homes to see the children who are in foster care, not necessarily a foster parent, but a person who goes out and kind of monitors and sees what's going on, has a relationship with the children, asks questions and things like that. And I know for myself personally, when I did that, I definitely learned a lot, things that you take for granted about, if it's the child that you birth and you raise or you adopt or whatever the case may be, a lot of the things that you might take for granted and that child's, upbringing, it's different when you're dealing with a child who's in the foster system. So I love the fact that you did include that. And then for the purpose of Jade herself, it shows that she was a person that, she's like, I went through this thing, and, I was, had the experience that I had, and I want to be able to kind of pay it forward by helping somebody else. So I love seeing that aspect of who she was. And so, and now with Doreen. Now, of course, we oftentimes hear of people, drug, sex, and rock and roll. That's what it is. And how people oftentimes in that space of being in entertainment end up, becoming addicted to drugs or alcohol, sometimes both. And so that a natural kind of storytelling for you, being that that is something that we oftentimes think of when we think of people in the music business?
Yes, and one of the things that I wanted to show there is that, because a lot of times we wonder, those people have all that money, why would you, ruin your life like that, jeopardize your career and all of that. But it usually it starts out where people think they're having fun. Nobody starts out to be a drug addict living in the alley or anything like that. It starts out there having fun. And the other thing that usually happens is that it's a friend. We have the idea of what's that Curtis Mayfield song, I'm Your Pusher Man, and
Mm,
there's some
right.
nefarious character lurking in the alley. It's not really like that. It's a friend. And so in
Mm-hmm.
this case, it was Doreen and her sister.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the other thing that I wanted to show, how people get started, and then maybe people be a little bit more empathetic But then, and the other aspect too is that when people do get ready to make their mind up that they want to, get clean and go to rehab or whatever, there's no facilities. If you don't have the money to pay to go, Betty Ford or Hazleton or somewhere expensive like that, to get to most of these, most places, it's very expensive. Or the people that they do take, that they don't pay, that don't have to pay, it's a long waiting list. So, somebody could say, I really need to do better. And then, the waiting list, okay, come in 3 Tuesdays from now. Well, hey,
Mm,
by then that person could have OD'd or anything.
right.
So that's something else that's kind of shown in the story. And the other thing, I like all those shows like Behind the Music and those shows on Reels channel about the artists and things like that. And one thing that I get from that is even if the person is, trying to do better or whatever, people give it to them.
Hmm.
Hangers on and um, they're just not necessarily in a good environment. So even if they're trying to do better, they just really have to almost kind of like Marvin Gaye, where he went away to, was it Belgium? You just about have to go to a whole, take yourself totally out of that
Mm,
environment. And he did. And I was my understanding that he got better. And then what happened? When he came back to the U.S., it kind of backslid and did even
right.
worse.
Right. And it's something that you're talking about that because on Thanksgiving Day, I had a very quiet day at
I
home and
watched it
I was
too.
watching Unsung and
Right.
all day
I
long they
did
were
too.
unsung.
Yes.
So many artists over time that have had these types of issues. And and I also watch Five Heartbeats because Eddie Kane, Five Heartbeats, or Kane or
We're
King,
successful now.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And how the fact that, or watch the Temptations with
Mhm.
actually several of the Temptations that had some type of abuse problem. I'm thinking specifically of David Ruffin, how he just had this friend that was hanging out, and they just
Mhm.
partied, things like that. And I've had people say that I don't understand how these people do it. Number one, it's readily available. You have the hangers on and things like that. And the other thing I often say that I believe whatever the addiction is that people have this thing where they have reached a certain level of success and they feel like everything has to be more successful than the last thing, and that's very hard to deal with all of that, all the celebrity and all the expectations and stuff. And so people just find ways to self-medicate to not have to deal with whatever that thing is that is expected of them.
Mhm. Yeah, and like I say, and they initially they start out there having fun.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Then becomes something else. So, but I love seeing her trajectory and, the fact that she did want to have a better life and all of the things that she did to work towards having a better life in spite of whatever little things that were happening. Because, of course, it's a book and it's meant to keep you engaged and have an exciting story. So, there are a lot of other things that are going on that we're not even going to talk about here. So, now with Carmen, it was also interesting about her because number one, she is the one in the group that she was, I would call the thick girl. So there's that she's dealing with because oftentimes, well, when you're in these spaces, people expect you to have a certain aesthetic or to look a certain way, and she didn't necessarily fit into that. So that's one thing
Mhm.
early on, and then just later when she's dealing with her different relationships and specifically with some trouble that her son gets into. So how important was it for you to have kind of show a different side of what it is to be a woman in the industry in terms of the aesthetic?
Well, and not necessarily even just in the industry, just so, black woman, period, that, everybody's not um, Beyonce size. And even her Beyonce probably has to do a lot of working out to stay at that size. So just wanted to show, different sizes, colors, whatever. Because one of the things with Doreen initially, growing up, she had a I don't want to say a complex, but um, a little insecure because she's dark skinned.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things though that she gets more comfortable within the group is to, no, show that off, show that off. So, it's just a lot of things that we as Black women deal with, in addition to just being a woman anyway. But then you
Right.
got, this skin tone versus that skin tone. And then, this hair versus that hair. Because, Carmen, she goes through some issues with her hair in
Mm-hmm.
the story as well. And then, like I say, size is another thing that a lot of times um, we equate with our self worth.
Mm-hmm. But she didn't have any struggles with getting relationships. So I like that too. That you showed her that, as a, full figure Black woman, she had options and love. And I like the fact that you show that because oftentimes people are led to believe that maybe you don't because you don't fit a certain look or certain aesthetic. But that was not Carmen's issue at all.
Oh no, yes.
And so now with her son, we watch her have to deal with, well, in the story, what brings into the story, dealing with the legal system and how sometimes young Black men can get, into situations where they get railroaded. So that was also an interesting part of the story, just to see how that all played out. And like I said, we're not going to tell everything, but seeing her navigate that and watching what her son had to go through and making sure you have the right person that's really going to advocate for you and all of that, how challenging, or was it challenging to include that part of the story as well?
Actually, this for a long time when I was working on this was actually two books, and
Oh.
one was a book about the singing group, and then another one was going to be a book about Carmen and the legal issues that she was having with her son. And she wasn't necessarily part of a singing group. It was kind of about her and her son. And some of that came from, what was going on with George Floyd. Some of that came from Breonna Taylor and all of that was going on. Um, I retired. I was a national bank examiner, and I traveled quite a bit. And so one of the things, and I worked in Texas. So
Okay.
not Breonna Taylor, who's the one? Now that's a shame because they always said say her name. The one that was in Texas,
um
Sandra Bland.
yes, it was on
Yeah,
the tip
that's
of
what I'm
my
thinking of,
tongue.
Sandra
Yes.
Bland. Yeah, so
Mm-hmm.
I always really that really impacted me because I always thought, well, that could have been me because I drove a lot in Texas. I drove a lot in back roads, 2 lane roads, whatever, and I also got stopped twice by
Mm.
police for on a humbug. So all of that with the legal system, that was something that like I said, that was going to be its own book. But then, like I say, the more I thought about it, that's kind of why I just mushed them together.
Oh, okay. Okay. And I mean, it is important to see that, and to just to understand, because in the story we get to understand, what happens. We get to see what sometimes families have to go through to try to take care of their children or their loved ones when they get into certain situations. And
That's right.
because of who she was, she had some privilege, so to speak, that maybe other people don't have in terms of helping her child. And it was just interesting to see that as well.
Yeah, and Benjamin Crump, he can't do everybody.
Right,
So so
right.
yeah, that's what this was, her story was trying to help her son. And I have two sons, and you think about that because, well, and now I mean even with girls too, because
Right.
it's so random. That's the thing, like the young man in Florida that was, I think the guy said he was playing his music too loud or something like that.
Mhm,
Just craziness in the, Trayvon with the Skittles and all of that.
mhm.
It's so random
Right.
that, it can be, straight A student, doing well, all of that, and still, get in trouble. People, sometimes we say, well, they ran. Why did they run? or why didn't they follow instructions? Well, even when they follow instructions, things
Right.
happen. So,
Right, right. And I think it's important to, to tell these stories, and all of these things make your characters more well-rounded. And I mean, it does give you food for thought, as it did, for me, just to see that, to think about that, because I think of the people who may not have, well, I'm not going to say too much, but they may not have resources or people that they can go to that can help them or assist them, or, they may not have property to sell, or whatever it is that people do to be able to help them when a child of theirs or a loved one of theirs gets into some sort of trouble, and what that really means, what that looks like. So yes, this is fictional, but it does make you think about these are things that happen in real life, and what are some of the choices and decisions that people have to make. In this case, in this lovely book, it's these are some of the things that would lend themselves to these women to deciding to go on this tour. But these are things that play out in a lot of our lives, or a lot of the lives of people that we know. So Angel, of course, is the one who is really trying to ignite her career, and she has things going on as well. And that really just makes me think about some of the people that we see who may be out of the spotlight, want to get back into the spotlight, and what it means to try to be back in the spotlight. And, also thinking of, okay, well, you're the star. Why don't you just do it on your own? So, I mean, just a lot of things with that. So, of course, for the purpose of storytelling, she would want to get back with the group, but she's got this ego.
well, and there's a philosophy that says let me see, let me get it right now, that your biggest strength is also your biggest weakness.
Mm.
So, the ego and the drive and all of that is, what propelled her to reach, be successful. But that's also holding her back. So, and so that was one of the things I tried to show. And that's also one of the things I was trying to have her, not just be a bitchy character. Sometimes we think, that the person that um, ends up being the star of the group or the leader of the group, we kind of put a little negatives on them. But I
Mm.
saw kind of wanted to show things from her point of view also, as to her background before she got in the group, and how the group impacted her and her family, and what she had to do to be in there and to stay in there. So maybe we'll, like I said, there's my version, your version, and what happens, and what the truth is in between. So, while something may look one way on the outside, once you know the whole story, you might think about that person a little differently.
Because one of the things when I looked at her, I see her as a character who's just looking looking for something, searching for something, or some people say looking for love in all the wrong places. Just it's like there's something, even though she's had this great success and all of that, there's an emptiness that causes her to make certain choices, I should say. And I would venture to guess that that would be true for a lot of people who find themselves achieving at such a high level.
Well, and one thing in particular, like you mentioned, unsung, most of those people, I guess that's why they're unsung, they reach a certain level and then something happens and they fall off and they become, quote unquote, regular people. So, but really that is the norm. So I think maybe if people in the industry were, I don't want to say trained, but if they had the idea, kind of almost like an NFL player or a sports player, they know that their career is going to be X number of years. I'm not going to be playing football when I'm 60.
Mm.
So, I need to make the most of it during these years, save my money, do whatever, and then try to think about what I'm going to do next. But I think a lot of times, it seems like people in the music industry and acting too, I guess, a lot of times they kind of feel like that gravy train is going to keep on going. And so when trends change, tastes change, or whatever, they're sort of caught flat-footed because they had never, You hear that like that on Unsung. You hear that all the time. It's that, I just thought it would last forever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's you're only as good as your last hit, you know.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's a thing. And now we kind of started out, of course, this book is about the music industry in a roundabout way, but you did have to learn things about the music industry in order to be able to craft the stories of what these women are challenged with. And so, with that, were you surprised by the things that you learned about the industry itself, or were these things you already knew?
Mm, For the most part, I think there were things that I already knew. I had to get some details as far as royalty numbers and that type of thing. But for the most part, I think it was things that I already knew.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah,
I've
because
just
it's
always been fascinated
why,
by
yeah.
the music industry. I've read all of everybody's book from Motown. I read all of their books. Everybody else that's had a biography, Etta James, all those people. So I've always been fascinated by that subject.
Right. And it is really interesting because I mean now if you're people if anybody's watching this who's like, Phyllis and I, we watch Unsung and all these different shows, but if you know anything about the music industry, that, really a lot of times the people that we love, the songs and stuff that we love so much, those folks a lot of times are broke. Because if you're going to buy an album, or a CD, or well, we're not even doing that anymore, so that's a whole thing. But back when
Mm.
we were, let's just say for the sake of argument, the album costs $20. How much is the artist actually getting off of that $20 album sale? So it is something.
And like in the new edition uh, series that they had, and they were
Hmm.
like 3 albums in, and they were well when they signed the contract, I think they got $500 in a Betamax,
Mm,
and then they were like maybe 3 or 4 albums in, and they were still living in the projects.
right.
So, and
Yeah.
but one thing that happened in that movie that also happens a lot because sometimes we equate it with racism, and because like we remember Little Richard, getting ripped off and all of those. What's the other guy? Frankie,
Frankie Lyman.
yeah, Frankie Lyman, and all those people getting ripped off, and other people putting their names on the songs for credits that they really didn't write. We think of it kind of as racism, but it happens with black uh, record companies too. So I
Hmm.
think it's not necessarily the color. It's just, and I don't want to call it greed, but it's just that's kind of just I guess the way the industry is. And one thing that happened in that New Edition movie, where initially, like I said, they started out, they had been so successful, but they didn't weren't making any money. And one of the guys, I forget which one it was, he told the young man, he said, "Well, did you read your contract?" Which of
Hmm.
course, people, they're
Right.
kids. But when it turned around, when the tables turned, and he was over, I think Boys to Men or somebody like that, and they came to him with the same issue. That's what he told them. Said, "Well, did you read your contract?"
Hmm.
So it's very. I guess it just like I said. I guess I'm just trying to say it's not really a racist thing. And even like and I can see how that can happen because I sent out a lot of query letters and got a lot
Hmm.
of different forms of rejection. And so then when I did finally get an agent and everything seemed to be going great and we were signing and everything, she said, "Well, you have such and such many days, and then get back to me." And I just wanted to say, "Look, I'm gonna sign right now because
Hmm.
I can't be choicy. I'm just so glad." But I can see how that can happen because
Hmm.
you're so glad to get it out there, especially when they're younger, and all you want to do is all I want to do is tell a story. All they want to do is sing,
Right.
and um, you're just so happy to do that on the one hand, and then number two, there's 50, 11 people behind you that if you're going to
Right.
be too much of a troublemaker or high maintenance, I'll say not troublemaker, but too
Right.
high maintenance, they just go on to the next person. So you can
Hmm.
see how that can happen.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that is so true. Just reading the contract and, making sure the numbers are right. And you're right. It's not, strictly a racist thing, because, well, we know Motown, other folks, other people did that as well, where, certain people were making all the money. But I also love that you talk about that in terms of the contract, and we see the women dealing with some, things as far as that part is concerned. But also the thing of, understanding that people who write and, and potentially produce, that there's a different bucket for them than it is for the people who are actually, performing and things like that. So it's really something to see, to
Yeah,
think,
those really are the people that make the money.
those are the people that make the money.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Well,
So
and if you sing, as long as you go out and do shows, they make money. But if you're not out there performing, you don't. They don't get paid. Whereas if you wrote the song, you get paid regardless of who sings it.
Because one thing I've been noticing lately, on some of the commercials have like popular songs, and I'm thinking, I wonder if the people who sing those songs are getting anything. Like, for example, the Emotions, have one of their songs that's in a commercial right now. And they were one of the unsung people on
Mm-hmm.
the shows the other day. And I'm wondering, if they're getting paid for Best of My Love. Probably not.
I don't think so.
Probably not. Or there's
Yeah.
another commercial that has a song by Faith Evans in it. I was like, I wonder if Faith is getting anything for that. So it just makes you wonder about that. Like, yeah, it's good. I guess if people know who those songs are by, they might decide to go listen to the music if they hear it in a commercial or a movie or whatever. But yeah, that's just something. But at the core of the story, it talks about the music business, it talks about these women and their individual lives, but then it also talks about them together as a unit. So what, if anything, do you want people to be able to take from the story of the Diamonds, them together as a unit, or attempting to be together as a unit?
Well, I think the underlying theme would be forgiveness. Like I said, when you see something from somebody else's point of view, it you may not agree with them and you may not understand it, but at least you know that it was not whatever happened. It was not that they were trying to um, hurt you. There's a
Mm,
little part that's in the beginning of the book. It says, "The first to apologize is the bravest. The first to forgive is the strongest. The first to forget is the happiest." And that's
mhm,
by Anonymous. But so, sometimes things will happen and you'll be carrying a grudge, mad about something, and the other person has gone on their merry way. They don't even
mhm,
know that you're mad, don't care that you're mad. They're happy living life. So, we always hear that in church and, all of that, that forgiveness is for you. It's not for the other person. And forgiveness doesn't mean we have to be best buds or call each other every day. But just think of forgiveness as for yourself.
mhm, mhm. I love that. I love that. And that quote is great. I have to look at it again. Oh, I'm looking at my signed book by you. I just want to look at that again. 1 second. The first to apologize is the bravest. Yeah, because it's hard to be the first. The first to forgive is the strongest. The first to forget is the happiest. Yeah, that's good. And I love that your book starts that way. And we see how that plays out in reading the story of Intermission. So everyone, if you've had a chance to read it, please go ahead and, as Phyllis said earlier on, leave your reviews so that people can see that it's being read, that it's loved and enjoyed. And, we just scratched the surface of what the book is about here today. So if you haven't read it, please go and grab a copy, read it. A lot of us are going to be on different extended breaks over the holiday season. You can read it in a day or, a couple of good nights. You can read it. It's relatively easy to read through, and it moves fast, so I love that. But yes, I encourage you to grab a copy. So of course I know that when you have a book that's already out in the world and being promoted and all of that, that you're probably already at work on something else. So what is it that you have coming down the pike that we could be on the lookout for?
Well, I do. Well, coming out next summer. Well, I guess this summer is what I should say. And still kind of working on some things. But what I will say, she owns a restaurant. The owner, she owns a restaurant, and it's also some family drama. And the way I'm describing it right now, I think is daughters. This is about mothers and daughters, dreams, dessert, and deceit.
Daughters, dreams, dessert, and deceit. That sounds good. That sounds real good. So you
A
said
taste for more. That's the name
we
of it.
can
A
look for
taste
that.
for more.
A taste for more, and we'll be looking for that. And you said next summer.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, that sounds really tasty, delicious. All of those good things. Be looking forward to that. So, any other events that you have coming up between now and the end of the year for intermission that people can be on the lookout for?
Nothing public. I have some book clubs that I'm going to be meeting with, but nothing public. I did my last trip or out of town event last 2 weeks ago. Okay, I did the
Mhm.
called Books by the Bank in Cincinnati. So
Oh,
that
okay.
was the weekend before Thanksgiving, and so now everything's kind of dying down, and want people to buy the book for Christmas.
Yes.
One of the things, there's so much going on, and got murders and spy balloons and war in Israel and all of this other kind of stuff going on. So, um, we talked about some serious issues that are covered in the book, but for the most part, it's just a good time. So take a
Mhm.
break. We need to learn. So read some of those deep books, but then take a break and read Intermission.
I would agree. And quite honestly, we touched on it a little bit, but there are things even to learn in intermission. I always tell people that when I read a book, even if it is fiction, there's something that I can learn. Either I can learn, how I want to be or how I want to show up as a person, or I can learn how I don't want to show up as a person in the world, or like we talked about the foster care system, which brought some things to my remembrance, or whether it's the legal system, there are just things that you can learn. Or for a person who might be have a parent or a loved one who's dealing with Alzheimer's. I mean, all these sorts of things that you can pick something up that to glean from. And so I think that that's always a positive thing when you read, even though you're reading for fun. There's something you can kind of stick in the back here, or like make a little note on the side or whatever, and say, hey, this might be helpful to me or someone that I know. So I think that's wonderful. Well, Phyllis, I do appreciate you so much. This has been a long time coming to get you here to come talk to us on the BGC Book Club. And so I am excited we had a chance to do it, and we'll look forward to doing it again next year. We have a comment from Rachel, says thanks for a great pre-interview for her. Looking forward to the read. So please do read and review. How about that? Read and review. And we
Well,
love it.
thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And everyone, if you want to keep up with all of the things that Phyllis has going on, she is on Instagram, which has been scrolling at the bottom, as well as her website, which I do know lists, the things that she's doing when she has upcoming public events and all of that. So you'll be able to see that there. So Phyllis, if you could hold on for me for 1 second, don't hang up just yet. I do want to let everybody know what's coming up these next couple of weeks as we start to wind down for the year, but I will check in with you in just a second. So thanks again.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. All right, everybody. I am so happy to have had a chance to talk to Phyllis. I love music. That's one of the things where you'll see some musical things coming from me in the new year, or from me and Brown Girl Collective, because I do love music, and it's one of those spaces I haven't really tapped into yet, but stay tuned. You're going to see it in the coming year. But as for upcoming books within the next couple of weeks, we have two. One is going to be Perfect Little Lives, which will be out. Actually, it comes out on December the 5th, but we get an opportunity to talk to the authors on the day before. So I'm looking forward to that. It's a mystery novel by Amber and Danielle Brown, who are twin sisters who were actually here at the beginning of this year with their book that came out in the latter part of 2022. So I'm excited to see the twins again next week, Amber and Danielle Brown. So they'll be here for that. And then the following week, the last actual book that we are going to discuss for the year is Did You Hear About Kitty Carr? Trying to get the lighting right so you can actually see that. Did You Hear About Kitty Carr by Crystal Smith Paul. She will be here on the 11th of the month to talk about her book, which has gotten a lot of buzz. It was a Reese's Book Club pick. So she will be like the last full-fledged novel that we will read and discuss for the year. Because people always say I read a book a week. So some of y'all can't keep up with me, but for those who can, she will be here on that second, the second Monday in December. And then the third Monday in December, I haven't created anything for it yet, but we are going to do the BGC Book Club Winner's Circle. So if you've been around for a while, last year in December, the last show of the year was a Winner's Circle, wherein I'll put out a survey and you'll have the opportunity to vote for your favorite books across different genres. You'll also be able to vote for your favorite interviews. So, Phyllis has a potential to be one of the favorite interviews of the year, whatever case may be, or you might be the favorite book. And it's probably about 20 different categories going all across. It'll be people that we've had in this space, as well as people as we have not, that, we are, forecasting for the coming year. So be on the lookout for that. I hope to have the survey ready by next week, so you'll have a little bit of time to vote on your favorite books, your favorite and as well as your favorite interviews from the BGC Book Club. So I'm looking forward to that to close out the year in this space. So that's all I've got for now, everyone. Thank you so much for your time, whether you're watching live or watching in a replay. You are so very appreciated, and we look forward to seeing you again here next week. Take good care. Bye-bye.